in Mexico that is kind of not talked about as much, and that is then I call it kind of an industry for kidnapping for ransom. And this is beginning to become more important because the cartels are not being as successful in their traditional business of drugs. So they're moving into that as well. And that's also very sad. Again, you know, any kidnapping is more than what we need. The numbers are not as high as in other places, but still that's no excuse. That's happening. The administration is really doing a lot. Is it doing enough? We're not sure. I mean, there are people in Mexico. Mexico and Mexicans are very curious in their sovereignty issues. You know, they think that the U.S. has no business going into Mexico in general. This is, and not everybody, but there is an element. There is, you know, Mexico, like the U.S., you know, when you look at the U.S. and the political spectrum that we have here, the Republicans and Democrats, you know, what one group says, the other is against. And Mexico is no different, except that Mexico, you have the complication that you don't have only two political parties, there's 5 or 6 political parties. And you know, they've been changing in percentages in the last 2 administrations. And the president, you know, the president goes in for a 6-year term, no re-election. He's 3 years into this term, so he's got 3 years left. And it is thought that that party, the PAN, will lose in the next presidential election, and the PRI will get it again. But the PRI are against the PAN. The PAN is against the PRD, and everybody. So it's kind of a mess. Sometimes you have this kind of gridlock, as we have here. So it's no different. I mean, it's really kind of a result of democracy. It's really good in a way, because there is the dialogue, but it does slow down the process. In terms of crime, you know, I was going to talk about the element in Mexico, especially the left side, that objects to anything where the U.S. may want to look into. And the U.S. and Mexico have agreed on the Mérida Plan, a plan very similar to the Colombia Plan, where the U.S. is funding or subsidizing the cost of fighting crime in certain areas. But the numbers are, for example, someone just told me recently, in the Colombia Plan, I think like 350 helicopters were sent, and to Mexico has been a handful. And Mexico is a much larger country than Colombia. So it's not making an impact. At this point, it's really kind of a political statement. And they had to tread kind of carefully because there is this element in Mexico that will object to invasion of sovereignty issues in Mexico, and they don't want. But at some point, if the danger gets, you know, high, and if the exposure of U.S. investment in Mexico is at risk, the U.S. will do more. At least that's what's hoped by a large majority of the people. So, and of course, I don't mean it in the sense of sending troops. I mean in financing. Through financing, through working in bilateral programs, on the business side, security, and all of that. So I think what Mexico is going through is going to take probably another year or 2 to begin to diminish. But even so, business continues. There's a lot of U.S. investment in Mexico. I mean, if you drive around in Monterrey, which is where I have lived the last 16 years, you drive, there's industrial parks, and you know, there's McDonald's, and there's Johnson & Johnson, and factories, and Whirlpool. It's just like being here. So there's a lot of investment there. And that has to be protected. But it's kind of a function of what I talked about, trade. Wherever there is lucrative or profit potential, an investor is going to weigh the risk and invest. Right. So that continues, and it's increasing. So there is more investment, and there is more trade.
Joe, I know that we've had discussions about you having this session. Obviously, we didn't draw, to it. Is there a way in your mind that we, through the Chamber and the Small Business Committee, can, help spread the word or do something further? I know we were all excited about having this session here. Hopefully it would, would draw some, because there are opportunities. But obviously, we haven't done the work enough to get the interest up to to bring in. So if there's something that you can think of, or we can put our heads together, on that, again, we're more than willing to do it. I think you had an excellent presentation today. I learned a couple of things myself, and I've lived in Texas and done banking on the border and cross-border for years, so I understand a lot of what you're saying. And it was interesting in El Paso in banking there. I had a couple customers that were involved with Maquiladoras, where particularly in the coupon since I worked with that, I tend to look at that, and the majority of the grocery store coupons that you see go either to Del Rio or El Paso for processing, because they're actually sorted in Mexico as they go through that process. So there's, you know, even little things that, you know, that can be done there, you know, on it. So I don't know if there's any thoughts you have. We're open.
Well, there are a couple of things, and you know, we have been kind of brainstorming about this ourselves, and in doing this outreach to the rest of the Irving Chamber business community, to make them aware that this does exist. But again, you know, what I mentioned before, because I see this every day, and I'll talk to businessmen, and they'll say, well, you know, there's nothing I can do in Mexico. And after I sit down with them and talk, sometimes, you know, things do come up. And so I never thought about that. And there are some of the committees, some of the other organizations, economic development, that I think do more with.
And I think more the medium and larger size companies are probably more receptive to the
Yes.
thought than the smaller ones.
I always think
And
that is an opportunity.
this is geared towards the smaller business, and you know, we'd hope to have some draw. But you know.
Well, you know, I do a workshop. In fact, I kind of translated this presentation. I had it in Spanish, and I translated it to English last night or yesterday afternoon, because I do, here in Irving, there's a big Hispanic business community. You know, restaurants and stores and consultants and service providers, and a lot of them have either roots in Mexico or somewhere in Central or South America. And they're all interested. You know, I sometimes, and I've told this to someone, I see this entrepreneurial excitement more so in Mexico than here in the U.S. And you know, and we are. I mean, the U.S. is, you know, very, very much entrepreneurial, and we heard this morning about the small business and the success and everything that it does do, but sometimes out of necessity, you know, a country like Mexico, when you don't have a job, and when you don't have Social Security, and when you don't have a lot of other infrastructure to support economically, people are forced to just wheel and deal and do something. You know, whether they have to make tamales and sell them on the street, or whether they have to go and cut grass or do more. You know, they're out there. And I've been doing this seminar with a couple of people here in Irving over at City Hall in Spanish, and we have drawn groups of 150 to 180 people. And in fact, I have, what I do with these, when I talk to someone who's interested, well, we fill them out. And this is what I have. I have a whole bunch of these, of people that are looking for one thing or another. So this is what I put into this, I used to call it database, but it's not really a database, because a database sounds very static. It's just a listing of things. And, you know, I have this portfolio, and this portfolio, you know, some people are looking for this and some people are looking for something else, and it's an easier doing the matchmaking search. But all of these things, all of these people in these seminars have one thing in common. They're very small. They're very small entrepreneurs. They're generally the one man or one-man shop, or at least most 2 or 3 people. And in the Irving Chamber, in terms of the membership, I don't know how many of those we have that are more of the mainstream. And by mainstream, I mean, you know, the regular chamber members, because some of the ones that come to these seminars in Spanish are members of the Irving Hispanic Chamber. And some come, in fact, they hear from Arlington or from Dallas, and they come here to Irving to attend these workshops. But I had thought that a workshop or a conference or a presentation like this to the Irving, you know, focused to the Irving group, you know, would begin to disseminate the information and begin to get some people interested. And I don't know, I'm still open to suggestions, but you know, maybe I need to participate a little bit more in some of the committees that...
I don't know. I think, you know, in my mind, some of it is that perception that if you're not bilingual or have bilingual capability, then how could I look at doing business in Mexico?
Yeah.
Would be, you know, one thing where obviously Hispanic Chamber would be, you know, foment that more.
But okay, but that's yeah. And
the other is that a lot of our participants, like Joanne, are in the service business, and you know, it's not feasible necessarily for somebody in Dallas to provide a small business to provide, you know, those type of services unless you're going to gear up to be binational. So, you know, I don't know. I mean, like she was saying, it'd be great to cater a wedding in Acapulco, but just your initial cost of transportation is going to eat up what it would cost.
Well, yeah.
to
I mean,
here.
I mean, I said it, but I know it's not practical.
Yeah, and again, it's what they're looking at when we look at a lot of people. In the last session on HR, they were asking how many people had X, Y, and Z employees, because there are different levels that you trigger additional, you know, federal laws that impact you. So how many have 50 or more? How many have 20, 30? And, you know, we had representation all along, but most of them were in the 10 and under, you know, type of category. So.
And by the way, John, for example, there may be 4, 5, or 6 caterers in Mexico that are of sufficient size that may do or want to do things here, and it need a corresponding relationship with someone, an organization, to be able to do that. And on top of that, there are also, I don't know, demands or needs here in this community that you are not aware of that come through the center. For example, and I get a lot of people from Dallas and Arlington, these other areas.
Well, it might be product related on a supply source or something like that, that, you know, or she could be the recipient of things so that she could expand her offerings into another segment of the community.
And we all, and again, this was ABCs of doing business in Mexico. You know, perhaps it should have been doing business internationally, because, you know, if someone is interested in Europe or Finland or Mongolia or Asia or China or India or Pakistan or the Middle East, Dubai, you know, we could do some of those connections.
Another approach might be, and I'm just brainstorming here, is that how can your products and services be received, or, you know, how do they fit in that, you know, international market, to get it back to the level that, you know, yes, what you do can have some impact because a couple of the things we're brainstorming on here, and that might go, oh, okay, and from there do it. Obviously, in the Hispanic Chamber, like you say, most of the folks have a connection, and they're thinking about how they can help, you know, their connection down there, or that they can help others succeed as they've succeeded in coming to this country.
No.
Just some thoughts. I
No,
don't
okay.
know which way to go on.
And the other comment I can make is that this is a trade center, it's an international trade center, but we also have connections with 10 other U.S. cities. Now, again, that may not be practical in your business, but in someone else's business, someone may say, well, you know, I'm interested in Houston or New York or Chicago or Dallas or Los Angeles, making a connection. And we have done that even through this trade center and the activities that I've had. I've connected people here, for example, produce. People that import produce and fruit from Mexico with people on the West Coast that do the same, and they've been able to work together. So it's not really international, it's really within the U.S.
Good.
So anyway.
Well, we thank you for your time.
Yes, thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Let her go through her spiel. She's got a closing spiel she needs.
Oh, okay.
We just thank everybody that attended, and be sure to, on your way out, to visit our exhibitors and drop your card, so that you'll be eligible for the door prizes that they'll be giving away. And don't forget the bonus session on social media, which will begin at 11:45.